So in this video I'm going to go through the first introductory level question on suspense accounts, and the objective of this is to look at correcting errors in trial balances. So what we have is a trial balance for a business, and the business is appropriately named Inexperienced and Company. And I suppose the big thing is that the trial balance, as you can see here at the bottom, has got a suspense account balance on it. So that's a problem for us. 58,054 is the balance. So there's something wrong in the trial balance, and we are asked to prepare journal entries correcting all errors you identify in the trial balance, and then draft the suspense account. So we're going to switch to the solution. This question, as you can see, is page 52 in your booklet of questions. So I'll switch to the solution and we'll go through the process involved. So on the solution, I just replicated the trial balance here, and we've got our 58,054 displayed at the base there, so I'll just highlight that again. And what we need to do is we need to use our knowledge of assets, liabilities, income, expenses, capital and drawings to identify whether each item in the trial balance has been placed in the correct column. So this is the debit column, this is the credit column, and remember, dead click, debit side for expenses, assets and drawings. So everything that's in this column should be an expense, an asset or a drawings item. And CLIC, credit for liabilities, income and capital. So everything that's in this column should be either liabilities, income or capital. So we need to go through each item and just verify that it's on the correct side of the trial balance. Okay, so land and buildings, okay, you should know these are assets. They go on the balance sheet, they're fixed assets, and they are correctly on the debit side, so that's fine. Office equipment cost, okay, so the value of office equipment, the cost of office equipment is an asset. Again, that word cost, sometimes people say, oh, cost is an expense, but just be careful. It's the nature of the thing rather than what you spent, okay, or the description of it. So office equipment is an asset. It's going to be used by the business. So again, it's correctly on the debit side for expenses, assets and drawings. Office equipment aggregate depreciation. So that's probably the first one. There's a little bit of ambiguity about the nature of this. Now, aggregate depreciation is also known as provision for depreciation, and a provision in accounting is a special type of liability. It's an estimate of a future loss. So we're going to lose money. It's a liability in the future. So it's a liability and it is correctly on the credit side. So CLIC, credit for liabilities, income and capital. Vehicles cost, much the same as office equipment. That's an asset. They are fixed assets, they go on the balance sheet, and they are correctly on the debit side. And aggregate depreciation, again, as before, it's a special type of liability, so it's correctly on the credit side. Stock of the 1st of April. Okay, this is opening stock, and essentially we treat that as an expense this year. Okay, at a moment in time, it may have been an asset at the end of last year, but this year, it's treated as an expense. We assume that we have sold our opening stock and it goes into your trading account. You remember the cost of sales includes opening stock, so it's an expense, so it's correctly on the debit column. Trade receivables or debtors. Now, this is an asset. Okay, if you think of your balance sheet, trade receivables going under current assets, so debtors. So this is a problem. This has been put into the wrong side, so that should go on the debit side. So I'm just going to highlight that for the moment. It's one we need to deal with. By putting it in the credit column, it contributed to the problem that gave rise to the suspense account. So we will have to fix that, and we'll see the nature of the fix once we identify the other problems. Cash in hand. Okay, well, cash, you know, euros, notes and coins. You either have euros, notes and coins, or you don't have euros, notes and coins. And if you have them, they are an asset. Okay, so it's either a value, which is an asset, or else it's zero, which is obviously not relevant. So that's okay, that's an asset on the debit column. Trade payables, these are creditors or suppliers. We owe them money, they are liabilities, so that's correctly on the credit column. VAT liability, okay, there's a big hint there with that word liability, so it's correctly in the credit column. And then the next one, PAYE, PRSI, liability, that should of course be on the other column. So liabilities should go in the credit column. So that's again in the wrong column. That's a problem for us to address. Capital is its own category. So CLIC, out of the mnemonic dead click. So C, credit for liabilities, income and capital. That's okay. Prize winnings, that's like capital introduced. Okay, so it is correctly on the credit column. And drawings, okay, they're their own category, debit for expenses, assets and drawings, so that's correctly on the debit column. Sales, that's income, so that's correctly on the credit column. Now, purchase returns, okay, a little bit of care needed for this one. Okay, if you think of just purchases by themselves, they're treated as expenses. So a purchase returns is a reduction of an expense. So it should actually go on the opposite side to expense items. Okay, so that's a problem. Purchase returns should be on the opposite side to the purchases themselves. So they actually put it on the wrong side. They actually have treated it the same as purchases. So we have to deal with that one also. Purchases, okay, they're expenses. They go into your trading account. Remember, cost of sales, opening stock, purchases minus closing stock. Excuse me. So that's okay, it's on the debit side. Sales returns, okay, well once you know that sales are income, sales returns are the opposite of sales, so they go on the debit side. Carriage in, that's the cost of delivery. So the cost of delivery, that's an expense. It's actually treated as part of cost of sales, so that's all right. Discounts received, okay. Now again, one of the things that I suggest or I recommend is that when it comes to discounts received, discounts allowed, if you actually insert the word you immediately after the word discounts, so discounts you received, that's a gain to you, that's a benefit, it's an income. Okay, so it's correctly on the credit side. And the word discounts allowed, discounts you allowed, this is what you allowed your customers, they would be an expense. So they would go in the debit column. The next series of items are all expenses, salaries, rent, telephone, insurance and stationery. These are all expenses and they're correctly on the debit column. So what we've identified is these three items in the red rectangles. These are the problems. We need to fix those. And what I'm going to do now is just go through the workings, trying to figure out the logic of what exactly the nature of the fix required is. So the first one to deal with is trade receivable. So this would be a kind of a working that you could do if you're trying to figure out, I need to create a solution to this error, and what exactly is that solution. So with trade receivables, what we did was we put 31927 on the credit side. Okay, so that's what we did. And what we actually want is we want 31927 on the other side. So we have to cancel the 31927 that was incorrectly put there, and then we put in what we want. So here's our fix. We need to put a total debit of basically twice this value here, which is 63,854. So we need to debit trade receivables with 63,854, and we will have a corresponding credit in the suspense account. Okay, but this is just working out the logic of that. Now, this method that I'm demonstrating, it's worth taking a bit of time to understand the process. So I wrote in what we did initially. Right, we have 31927 on the credit side. That's wrong, so I cancelled it. Okay, so that's that cancel error. And then what do I want? I want 31927 on the debit side. So these two things that we have to do, okay, this was already done. So these two things we have to do, that's the nature of our solution, our fix. And we'll see the formal journal entry in the next part of the video. Okay, so doing the same thing for the PAYE PRSI liability. So PAYE PRSI liability, what we did was we put 2700 on the debit side. So here's what we did. Okay, 2700. So we want to cancel that and we put in what we want. So what we want is 2700. It's a liability on the credit side, so we have to cancel. Okay, so again, the solution is to put this total here, that's going to be 5,400 on the credit side of the liability account, and there will be a corresponding debit entry in the suspense account. But again, we shall see those journal entries in a moment. And finally, purchase returns. Okay, so what we did was we put 200 on the debit column. So here's what we did, 200. And we want to essentially cancel that and put it on the credit column. Okay, so we want 200 on the credit column. So what we need to do is we need to credit purchase returns with 400, and we'll debit suspense account with 400 as well. So I'll just show the suspense account with the opening balance. So the suspense account at the moment is 58,054 on the debit, so just show that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the journal entries. This is the formal part of the solution. We're asked to prepare journal entries to correct the errors that we've identified. Okay, so switching to the journal entries. So I need to debit trade receivables with 63,854 and credit suspense with the same amount. Okay, just to show that on the workings that I had on the screen a moment ago. This is what I've highlighted. So the total of these two values is 63,854 put on the debit side of the trade receivables account. Okay, so 63,854 and credit suspense. So this is the layout that we use to do the formal corrections in suspense accounts. We've got a journal reference number 1 and the accounts names, the ledger account names, a column for debit and a column for credit. For the PAYE PRSI liability, so again, just to go back to the workings, I've highlighted this material here. So we need to credit a total of 5,400 to the PAYE PRSI liability account. So that's that entry there. And then we debit suspense with the same amount. Okay, so the suspense will also be affected where you've got this type of error in a trial balance. And finally, with the purchase returns, you can see that I've highlighted here, credit it with 400 euros, and we're going to therefore debit suspense. So purchase returns, credit with 400, and debit suspense. Okay, so these are the journal entries, and what I'll now show is the effect on the suspense account. So I'm going to just highlight anything that says suspense, okay, because we have to complete the suspense account on the preceding worksheet. So the first one is a credit for 63,854, that's journal number 1. Then journal number 2 is a debit for 5,400, and journal number 3 is a debit for 400. Okay, so 1 credit and 2 debits. So now I go back here, we've got 1 credit, 63,854, and then 2 credits, okay, 5,400 and 400. And the suspense account balances out, which means that we've sorted out all the errors. So that's the solution to this suspense question done. In the video description, I've linked a document with a similar sort of question. It's also in your manual of questions, and I would encourage you to have a look at that other question.